The penultimate episode of the Wheel of Time Season 2. The 7th episode was following up my favorite of the series so far. I have quite a lot to say about it, but first I'd like to let you know why you will not be getting an episode 8 review of me for about an extra week or so after it airs. And that's because I'm going to be putting off watching it so I can then give a live reaction over in Utah with Matt Hatch and Brandon Sanderson, and we can have a discussion on the final episode and the season as a whole, which I could not be more excited to do. That's awesome. It also means I have to put off watching The Wheel of Time, which, despite my mixed feelings on the show as a whole, I'm a massive Wheel of Time fan. I'm excited to watch it, and I'm also as excited to talk with you all about it. So it's like, oh, amazing. I can't wait to do that.
But I have to not watch it for a week.
Don't worry, though. There will, of course, eventually be a review of the last episode here and a review of the season as a whole. Without any further ado, though, let's go ahead and get into my thoughts on episode 7. One pill makes you larger, and one pill makes you small, and the tea that Ishi gives you makes you trip absolute balls. Go ask Matt when he's curled in a ball. Getting in the same formula we've done before, we're going to be going from my least favorite plotline to my favorite. And unfortunately, my least favorite here, yet again, is going to be the Avienda Perrin plotline, where I just don't feel like narratively this is being smoothly handled along with the rest of the show, and even the way it's shot and presented is by far the roughest we're seeing of any of the episodes. I mean, the closest thing we got in this episode to a flicker, 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 flicker moment, which is a reference for book fans, is the incredibly choppy editing around Bane and Chiad beating Avienda. I swear it didn't feel like Hopper was barking at the violence, it felt like he was barking at reality, chopping around him. I get in concept this could be a great display of Ji-Ito. This is a part of Aiel culture that really needs to be handled with care and tact. And while it does communicate this angle of Ji-Ito, it's not exactly handled with what I would call care and tact. That, alongside some just egregious day for night where you can just see the shadows on actors' faces, made this, for me, just an unpleasant viewing experience part of the episode. Seriously, why is it color graded this way? It's so strange looking. At no other point has anything around Falma had a purple hue to it. This is followed up not by a whole plot line, but something I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, which would be the cold open. One of the things I really appreciate about the original telling of this sequence is Robert Jordan really emphasizes how uncomfortable Moiraine is. It is frigid. She is clenching her jaw so her teeth doesn't chatter as she's waiting to attend to this Aes Sedai. And I thought we'd be getting that for sure, because we see on the slopes of Dragonmount, they're not near the peak, they're on the slopes right next to Tar Valon, while the dragon is being born. It's freezing, but it seems to be like temperate where Moiraine and Swan are now. I guess you could just say that Aes Sedai are keeping that in their tower, but that hasn't been communicated to us. And we get a scene that's kind of just like warm and comfortable. And I think you could have easily communicated the same character work that's being done here with Moiraine and Swan if we had a more uncomfortable scene where they're trying to talk about the same thing with parents, maybe under their breath. The Aes Sedai who they're attending to reprimands them, saying like, keep it down, you're distracting me. You know, you need to just wait in attendance. We all have to sit in the silence as maybe Moiraine and Swan try to communicate with just their eyes before that is broken by the prophecy being foretold. It would have a lot more cohesion, character work, world building working in, instead of just them walking down a hall, turning into a room, and a woman collapsing. Especially for non-book fans. I feel like this cold open had to be kind of strange, though I do want to give credit where credit is due, and the de-aging work here well above the standard I feel for most TV shows. Granted, they had incredible faces in terms of de-aging to work with, but the combination of, I imagine, both CG and makeup work that's being utilized, borderline seamless. Like, they looked great. And while we're on the positives, of course, Rosamund and Sophie also just deliver when it comes to giving everything they can to the writing that has been handed to them. Which, speaking of performances carrying certain plot lines, I'm actually happy to say that Lan, for the first time, in a pretty significant step up in quality, isn't near the bottom, because what's going on with him and Moraine and his little investigation into what exactly has happened with Moraine was interesting enough, though it led to something I'm super questioning. Him figuring out that Moraine hasn't been stilled and instead is shielded, okay, for the change of rules that's happened here, makes sense-ish. In the books, you can clearly tell the difference between shielded and stilled, because you can still feel the source on the other side of a shield, whereas if you are severed or stilled, you can't feel it at all. I guess that would be hard to communicate in the show maybe, so they're just simplifying, which we've seen them do aggressively towards Jordan's magic systems. So Lan pieces together that she's shielded, not stilled, and it's confirmed after he talks with Logain, who he's a super dick to, though it's understandable. A false dragon isn't exactly someone in people's good graces. It's just so strange to see Lan taken in a direction where he's like tattling on Moraine to other Aes Sedai and the Amarlin. I have to just totally interpret this as a new character, a new relationship dynamic, and their final confrontation that happens while Rand is having his meeting with the Amarlin is interesting. I do like what is happening on screen, and while the writing I still feel like is having issue, Daniel Henney, Rosamund Pike, they're able to have chemistry, be believable, like I'm immersed in what they're selling me. Before we talk about Rand and the Amarlin and Rand and Lan though, I do want to talk about Nynaeve and Elaine, which we don't get a ton of in this episode, just a little bit, seeing them meet Loyal. I'm coming to just like every Loyal scene because Ahmed is clearly just chewing it up as Loyal, which I enjoy. And the little like him talking too much, Nynaeve cutting him off. It's those bits of candy from the books that my brain can't help but nom right on up. And Nynaeve's almost enjoyment, it seems, with how she puts the collar on the Suldam. I get it. And yeah, all right. I just wanted more. And that's probably going to be my biggest issue with season 1 and 2 together. Like the one they share the most is that there's just not a lot of breathing with these characters and these scenes. It feels like we're just go, 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 go nonstop. The show does its best when we finally and allow these characters that are being built competently enough to actually just interact with each other. I would have liked more of Nynaeve grabbing that Suldam, maybe throwing in a room with Elaine and expressing some of that anger that's really there. But the show as a whole just hasn't really had that patience, which I get because they're still trying to go through so much. I just feel like time earlier in the season could have been utilized more intelligently to give us more of that later on, especially in an episode that's so setup heavy. The strongest setup heavy episodes for fantasy shows, in my opinions, don't try and lean away from having a bit of a slower pace, but lean into it and allow payoff in small moments that has been building the whole season before we get into the big From here, we're going to talk about something that I think would be higher if we were allowed to spend more time with it, but it's such a short bit of the episode, I feel like I just can't put it there. But it's something I absolutely enjoyed, and that's still going to be Egwene and the Suldam, where Egwene does not talk this episode. She puts on a display of her power that is impressive, heard throughout Falma, and she does not speak until the very end, and her only line of dialogue in the whole episode, I believe, is just promising to kill her Suldam. Yes, Madeline is serving with the just simmering rage, and I'm really excited to see where this angle of the season ends up. I think it is the most solid overall without question for this season, and it's bringing Madeline's Egwene into like my favorite characters of the adaptation period. Following this up, I actually want to talk about Matt. Donald Flynn. You are Matt Cawthon in my head now. After some more head trauma is delivered to him, get half these characters to an MRI machine, my God. He wakes up with land fear, but then has a more intense dialogue with a Shamael. Matt hasn't learned the lesson, apparently. He wasn't in the DARE program as a kid like I was. Terrible program. But he ends up accepting a mysterious drink from a middle-aged stranger. Don't do that, kids. And trips balls. And I assume this is our replacement for the flicker from the book. And I don't objectively hate it. I'm very hesitant where I feel they are trying to take Matt, but it absolutely could land on its feet. Matt is being tempted into the shadow with mind games that align with this interpretation of the character we have gotten so far. He feels abandoned and a failure. He is afraid of the world around him, but doesn't want to be stuck in the life that he grew up in. Strings are tugging at him while he just wants to be free, and Ashemael's pitch is, I mean, yeah, there's a lot more layers to it, but the accumulation is talking about just finally being able to get one good night's sleep, which is a lie. That's not what happens when you got a bad trip. But Matt has reflections back to his abusive past. He sees himself hanging, alternate visions of the future, possibly, I don't know. And finally, he ends up in the arms of Ashemael with tears coming from his eyes. I will like this if Matt is tempted into the shadow, maybe makes some mistakes, has regrets, and pulls back without ever fully going into the dark friend territory. I won't like it as much if he's ever fully made a dark friend, because I think that'll just be basically unrecoverable for his character. Matt, in the books, walks some sketchy lines without getting into spoilers, but he is always to his core, to his soul, loyal to his friends. He's maybe even the best friend to others in the books, debatably. Underneath all the smarmy skeeviness of Matt at times, he loves others. He will humble himself to raise Egwene up. He will put himself in severe danger just to get someone out of prison, no question. It's not something he debates, he just does. And I hope a similar motivation is what jerks him away from whatever games Ashemael Lanfear are playing with him. And the more I sit on this, the more it really does feel like they are just setting up Matt to be the one who officially spits in the eye of the shadow, which would be very in line with the Matt we know and love. So the more I think about this, the more confident I am it's actually heading in a direction I'll like. And we're seeing some stuff from Matt in the books we've skimmed over folded back in here, like his scene with Lanfear. And I'm just enjoying seeing these actors play off each other as well. They're very talented in delivering the dialogue they get in fun ways, tense ways. Like all of the emotions these sequences with Matt want me to feel, I'm getting. And you see the fear under his eyes, but he's still delivering this whole ass energy to the Forsaken. It's hilarious. This is going to take me to, I don't want to say this is my favorite plot line, but it's the one I have the most to say about. And there are things here I really do like and things that I'm hardcore questioning. That's going to be Rand Lanfear, Rand Land, Rand the Amerlin, Rand Moraine. The best part of this for me was Rand early on with Lan, their brief dialogue back and forth where we get the best line from Lan in the show yet. When Daniel Henney is really allowed to embody the Lan that we know from the books, he kills it. Less Lan pissing on trees, more Lan being a great mentor to scared kids in a world that is ready to gobble them up. We even get some sword form references. Ooh. And then Rand goes in to see the Amerlin. And at first, I did not like this change to Swan Sanche, who, mild spoiler warning, in the books is more in favor of just letting Rand go out in the world and attempt to be the Dragon Reborn. And it seemed like, why are we having this conflict where she's now wanting to keep him captive? But it's justified for her in how bad things have gone so far in this turning of the wheel. And it allows the, keeping it vague, eventual downfall and schism that's in the future here, without saying what it's about or who, to be completely understandable. It's also understandable in the books, but they've done a good job of also making it understandable here. And now I do think it is the right choice, if that future is coming in this way, to have combined Leandrin and Elida. I'll stop talking about book stuff now. And when Rand tries to embrace the Source, he is undeniably more powerful than any other channeler in the city, country. Like Rand, pinnacle power potential, and he's smacked down by experience. And that is, while we're not getting the nuances of Jordan's magic system, a small beat that at least implies a lot of the depth of experience that's required to be a great channeler. And so it felt like a great scratch to an itch I've been craving this season. Anytime you can emphasize, yes, being a powerful channeler is great, but experience as a channeler debatably means more. And how casually Swan did it made me be like, oh, yeah, the Forsaken, they're the most dangerous channelers around right now. But the Aes Sedai are not completely incompetent. She sends Rand Moraine down to a cell, and Rand goes to sleep and asks Lanfear for help. And there were so many different ways this could have been taken, and it was taken in a way that I have so many conflicting thoughts on. First, Landfear just walking through a city, blowing things up casually with a smirk on her face while in some sensational costume design. I'm like, I don't know why she isn't just going into his cell, opening a gateway, yoinking him out of there, and pissing off. And so it's like, okay, there seems like better ways for you to accomplish this. But you can take it as a characterization for this interpretation of Landfear. She wants to be over the top and extra, and so she's going to get him in a way that's putting down the people who have been pestering her this whole time. And it leads to a confrontation between her and the Amerlin, where Moraine, with the help of Varen, is able to get Rand out of his cell. They meet up with other Aes Sedai. We're seeing hints of a larger conflict brewing, and then they are pulled away to a waygate. And after seeing Lan guide Rand through getting rid of Moraine's shield, which... okay, don't do any more of that, please? Why would Lan have anything to say there? Like, I have no problem with him discovering it's a shield with the rules established for the show, but him seeming to know what Rand's capable of is wild. And we get this beat where it's like, oh, Moraine is learning to trust others, but I don't think the type of trust she needed to learn was letting an inexperienced channeler, male channeler, channel at her, but okay, especially when we just saw her nephew is actually a dark friend, so maybe she shouldn't be trusting nobody. Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about that. They named the whole episode The Game of Houses, Deus de Mar. And the only thing that really plays into that, aside from the Aes Sedai stuff too, I guess, is what's going on with her nephew, which I liked actually the twist and delivery of all of this here. Moraine's sister turning him in, the commands he's given from Liandrin. I hope they don't forget that Liandrin now has a powerful noble out there who knows for sure she's a dark friend. So next episode, that should come to a big head, and it would be beyond stupid for Moraine's sister not to have told the guards, other people, a lot that yes, there is an Aes Sedai dark friend who gave these orders. It cannot be resolved with just killing Moraine's sister. But the performance here, the emotion of it, totally landed. Great sequence. I'm sorry I forgot to talk about it. But back to Rand, the waygate is opened, but before they can go through, Swan arrives, forces Moraine to close it, then Landfear arrives after her. Fun. So I think she was having fun, and she put Swan down no problem. So we've seen how much more powerful Swan is than Rand with experience, and then we see how much stronger Landfear is in experience. Just able to deliver something casual and small, but so viciously that Swan can do nothing about it. The waygate is opened then very quickly by Landfear. I really enjoy the smaller details that she does everything in channeling, just effortlessly compared to everyone else. One thing that adds a slight here for me is the look between Moraine and Swan right before they do walk in there, where yes, what Swan just did to Moraine, so impactful, and I don't think like planned between them, though there's that communication between eyes where I feel like there is still like, okay, shifting gears, we both know we're fighting for the same cause. It's also part of why I think that beginning where we see that level of like unspoken communication in the cold open between them could have been a nice setup to see it pay off at the end here, where they're having that like, big moment callback. And the biggest what of the show, not even the season yet, occurs where Moraine, Rand, and Landfear venture into the ways together. It's like going on a stroll next to Ted Bundy in the ways. Like, how's it going? Okay, this is a setup heavy episode. I would be lying if I said I wasn't interested on what they're going to do with that. And we're going to have a spoiler-filled bit at the end of this review where we talk about book implications and comparing things, because that is just a gargantuan question mark. Speaking of question marks, what is my rating of this episode as a whole? I would say it's a wavering 6. Depending on how a lot of the setup here is paid off in the next episode, in hindsight, I could like this one quite a bit. Or I could be left feeling like I got J.J. Abrams. I'm not entirely sure. So yeah, wavering 6 with potential either way. is where I'm going to sit on this. Without any further ado, though, we're going to go ahead and talk about spoilers for this episode and the series of Wheel of Time right after I let you know, hey, you can check out my book, Neon Ghosts, available now for physical pre-order in the links down below. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about spoilers for Wheel of Time as a whole and implications like till the end of series starting 3, 2, 1 now. Okay, all right, let's... For those of you who are still watching who haven't read the books, I'll let you know. Moraine disappears for a gargantuan chunk of the series because she tackles Lanfear into a doorway and is taken to another dimension or reality. This is after Lanfear does have a, explodey chaos time due to rage, and I'm wondering if this is the show's attempt to maybe build a bit more of a relationship between Lanfear and Moraine before we get there, so it feels like the stakes are a bit higher. Simultaneously, these two walking with Rand through this ethereal place could be acting as an angel and devil on his shoulders, trying to emphasize the, light and dark. It's just insane to me, though, to think that Lanfear and Moraine can walk together for any extended period of time without violence happening. Granted, Lanfear was undercover, I get it. This is just out and about the Forsaken. They're going to have to be so careful with how episode 8 covers this time. And I'm again just wondering why Lanfear isn't opening a gateway and why she's taking Rand into the ways. I hope this is part of the setup payoff. We get explanations for all of this. She has plans, schemes, and I want to trust that. I'm just confused. But that was just my thoughts on episode 7 of the Wheel of Time. I will give my thoughts on episode 8 in a live reaction with Sanderson and Matt. So please be patient for my thoughts and don't spoil anything for episode 8 for me on Twitter or in the comments. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. And check out the latest episode of Fantasy News that went live yesterday. Have a good one, y'all. Peace. And I'd like to give a special shout out to my latest high tier patrons: SP Chestnut Puck, Hannah J.O., Tiago Nascimento, JIQ, and Timothy